Good evening, everyone, especially those turning in on through the internet tonight. Whoop. But still, as tonight, talking about the spiritual obsession, and just like as he was just mentioning, discussing with Happy Life, one of the comments he was bringing up was he was just like how we have relatives or someone else that kind of bothers us and everything else. Well, leading into this one's topic is like we also have the spiritual friends, and there's a few of them that we would just sit there. It's like, okay, I've had enough of you. I'd kind of like to go away. So we were talking about this one, and this one's a bit of a tougher subject. For those that have been with Spiritism for a while, they'll know that we've got basically the three core books. You got the Gospel, you got the Spirits book, and then you got the Mediums book. And each one covers a certain pillar of Spiritism. Spirits book is the philosophy, the Gospel is for the religion, and then the Mediums book is for science. This is very kind of like they always push, like the Mediums book is more like the more advanced level stuff. But there's still some great material in there that's good for all of us to kind of learn to know. And obsession was one of those topics. So I brought it in and thought about it. But saw this in actually literally last week in the bookstore from the Mechanics of Mediumship. And I just happened to flip through, and sure enough, they had a chapter on obsession. And this is literally the first thing you read in that chapter. Thought and obsession. If examined thoroughly, the study of obsession in connection with mediumship would encompass the examination of nearly all the people of the earth. So when you sit here and think about it, just the study of obsessions, everything goes in our lives. You're studying everybody, the whole planet, incarnate, discarnate, everybody. We all have it. We all have our little quirks. We all have our things. We've all got things we've got to study. We all have to work upon. We're all works in progress. As far as I know, there's only been one perfect being on this entire planet in its existence. Yes? Oh, I thought you were going to give me the answer. But yes, and that one, he died on a cross about 2,000 years ago. So that was one of those things we were talking about. And we kind of sit there and say, like, this is literally the second paragraph with a little break in between. We base this statement on the action-reaction dynamics of thought. In turn, vary accordingly to the types of emotion and conduct to which they are attuned. Now, those of us that have been here a while, they've probably heard that word attunement, attune. And we've all mentioned, I think they've even brought in the radio, and every saying you dial into a certain frequency and you get to hear the music that you like. Well, it's just the same way. We have our own spiritual antenna, and we tune in to the spirits that are most like us, or that are on the same wavelength, same level as us. But as we know through our teachings and everything else, we're meant to progress. We're meant to eventually change the dial to a different station, a different group. And it's always very hard to do that transition. Habits, everything else. But as part of this also is you have your spiritual friends that are attuned with you. And how many of them are sitting there saying, like, no, don't leave us. Stay with us. We like having you amongst us. Even though everyone knows it's that person's time to go. Just like when you have friends over and everything else, you're having a good time, having a party or something like that. Eventually, it's time for them to go. Go back home, go somewhere else, whatever. It's the same thing here. When it's our time to move on and change the station to improve ourselves to the next level, there's a lot going on that kind of wants to hold us back and say, no. Let's keep going. Let's let the party keep going. But that's where we sit there and say, that's when it becomes the personal. You have to bring it to yourself. And that's where like the action reaction. You have to start creating your new actions. So you have to change your perspective so you get a better reaction. So if you want to do So that's where I know for me, especially when I was driving, I'd be driving down the road and everything else, and you'd always get you get that one person that cuts you off, and you want to sit there and show them the one finger salute or yell or scream or something like that. And then you have to sit there and you have to dial it back and say, no, 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 no. I have no idea what's going on with that person. He could be running late for work. It's his last shot. He's got to get there or he's going to get fired. It could be someone taking their wife to the hospital because they're about to have a baby, or they found out that their loved one was in a car accident and they're racing to the hospital. Who knows? There's a reason why this person's diving and weaving and getting to where they need to go. It could be that they're off to have fun or something like that. That is not for me to decide. So instead of me getting mad and upset and then creating a negative atmosphere around myself, it's one of these things like do the positive, put a positive action to it. And Sarah, and then I used to, then I sit there and I used to say like, go with God, have fun, be safe. Even though you're going 100 miles an hour, be safe, don't wreck, don't create an accident down the road. So create the positive reactions, and then as I find out when I get to where I'm going, I don't feel angry, I don't feel upset, I don't feel stressed or anything like that, because it's like I didn't let it bother me. And that's kind of like what this whole topic was. When you have these, we're going to go into the three main types of obsessions and how they get progressively more serious. But when we talk about them, we're also trying to say is like, yeah, we're going to just talk about them, because it's getting out of them, especially the more serious ones. It's a lot of work, a lot of energy, and it always takes more than one person. Simple ones, simple fascinations, you can kind of handle on your own. But when you start getting into the fascinations and the subjugations, it's more work, more people, a lot of energy to pull someone out of these obsessions. So starting off with the simple obsessions. Pulled straight from the Medium's book. So I literally wrote it out here for people if they want to read it. But I'm just going to focus on the ones I underlined here. Malevolent spirits impose themselves. They put themselves onto you and interfere against the will of the medium or the person. So anytime you see medium in here, it's us, because we're all mediums at various levels. Some are great, like Chico, and others of us can barely feel a thing. But still, they impose. And they impede them from doing their communications. If you're trying to do a prayer or something else, and all of a sudden you hear knocking or something, or some rustle, some noise, phone rings, whatever, it's like something to stop you from doing what you need to do. Like I said, these are the spirits that are trying to hold you back from progressing. So they'll do whatever they can to interfere. So like it says like, oh, you're going to go give a lecture tonight at the center. I'll make sure there's a traffic jam so you can't get there on time. Or they'll sit there and say like, oh, you want to read the book. I'm going to put your favorite program. It's got a special. It's going to turn on the TV right when you were going to sit down and do gospel at the home, or you're going to sit and read a book on whatever, something enlightening. Things that kind of hold you back. So they start doing these little things to you. And if you're actually a medium, that one that is more attuned and able to pick up on sitting there saying, no, that thought's not mine, or that's not true. Because when you have these, you can kind of recognize them. There's always that cartoon where you see like the devil on one shoulder, the angel on the other one. It's like the devil that's on your shoulders. It's whispering, and you can sit there and say, yep, I know you're trying to say bad things. I know you're trying to tell me what not to do, or what I should, what's fun, but not what's right. So yes, I understand it. You can usually tell that you're a part of your life. You can kind of sit there and say like, okay, yeah, you're giving me advice. I don't know if it might be fun, have that one more adult beverage, so that one stay up a little late, binge watch a few more Netflix shows instead of getting ready to go to sleep for work in the morning. That kind of thing. Yeah, I understand you're trying to do it. We can fall, which a lot of us do. We fall to those temptations, and that one wins. And we do something that then we wake up in the morning and it's like, oh, why did we do that? Because you pay for that with a consequence later. Then that's when you, and then like it's this, a lot of it times, sometimes you'll get one that's really tough to break free. They just don't want to leave, can't leave. And they also, like as mentioned before, the physical ones, the noisy ones that will sit there and make, like it says, they're the ones that will sit there and inspire someone to give you a phone call to talk, or something like your phone rings. It's like, why are you calling me at this time? Or whatever. It's like we usually have those things. Now, this one's probably, since this one's the one that it's easier for us to kind of break free, especially for those of us that have been with Spiritism for a while, that's read the books or learning the books and everything else, and making the efforts, your own spiritual growth. So I believe like nearly every one of us here, you're here to improve yourself spiritually, morally, physically. You're not here just to listen to me rant and talk about something. You're actually physically interested in this, and you're trying to find something in this that will help you improve just that little bit more. Am I right? So when you have this one, the simple one, it's usually pretty, this is one that they always tell you is like, this is the time where you have to really, like you got the, like I said, I talked to the devil, then you have your angel, your guardian angel and everything else. And that's the one that's like, you look at this one and says, okay, it's time to do what's right. So it's like, okay, you have somebody here, wants you to be naughty in whatever way. So you got to sit there and say, hey, maybe I need to educate this person. And we sit there and say, it's like, okay, then you would crack open the Bible, the gospel, something, happy life, something inspiring. And you sit there and you read it and you discuss it. You can just, usually I always say discuss it out loud. And then even if it's you're by yourself in your room, you open it up and you talk out loud and start teaching this obsessing spirit so that you're starting to give it help. And you're starting to say, hey, I'm growing to be in a better life. I'm growing to do good. I'm growing to be someone that can turn around and help you out. Because this is my own personal view. When I think of Jesus, and I'm sitting there saying, like, here he is, and all those things, that he, like I said, this is my own personal view. He stopped his growth, his spiritual growth. He said, like, I'm at a point now where I'm ready to turn around and I'm going to help this entire planet. I'm going to come and be the ultimate teacher, the example, the person for all of us to aspire to. So I'm going to be that person that can help them on their next stage. So he would turn around instead of keep going onward and upward to wherever he's next for him to go, which we can't even fathom. He turned around and says, I'm going to stop for a moment and I'm going to help the next person and the next person and the next. And I'm going to, so that I help all of earth to come and step them up higher. And that's what I would say, like, to these obsessing spirits. It's like, it's your turn on a much smaller level to turn around and say, hey, I feel like I'm evolving into the next level, if you will. But it sounds like, I have a feeling that you're on the lower one. Let me pass on, have a discussion with that obsessing spirit in a way of sitting there saying, kind of making it where it's either going to do one of two things. It's either going to say, like, forget this, you're no fun, I'm going to go find someone else, and they leave. Or they'll sit and they'll listen and think about it. They won't bother you as much anymore, other than to say, hey, read me another book, read me another section. like then all of a sudden he's like, it's wanting to learn from you, and then actually getting it help. In which cases we found from the Nasolar series and everything else, that's when we find out that other spirits will come and rescue it and take it to its next location, its thing. So it's going into its better place. It's getting help, or it's moving on to its next phase of its evolution. So then that's a win for you too. So you just didn't realize it, but you just helped another spirit that you can't see and everything else. By the way, if anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hands. We can always stop a little bit and discuss. Moving on to the next classification of obsession, fascination. This one's tricky. As it says, more serious consequences. Because the spirit, it whispers. I always hear the saying, they whisper sweet nothings. They tell you what you want to hear and everything else. They build up your ego. They build up your pride. And in doing that, paralyzes their capacity to judge the quality of their communications. So they start getting full of themselves. They start thinking like, oh no, man, there's no way. I got the spirit in me and everything else. I've been feeling blessed. Everything's going my way. Why would I think that I'm being led down a dark path? Let's go into this other one. They don't believe themselves to be deceived. But everyone around them sees it. It's clear for them to see. And then sometimes what happens is that spirit will try to pull them off, break them away, keep them away from other people that can probably see them and may actually have enough influence on the person to say, hey, I think you may have an issue, and I think you may need to get some help. Our fraternal assistants, spiritual assistants that we have here, so one of their big things that they do. It's like, hey, you think you may need some help in that department. But during that time, the blind confidence, like it says, think of the Napoleon complex. They're the all-powerful conqueror and everything else until they hit their Waterloo, and then they come crashing down. But until that time, they think that they are invincible, they're supreme, they're everything. They like says their pride is swollen. They have a huge ego, and this fascinating spirit just feeds it, keeps it going, makes their head so big they can't. And keeps them away from anyone that can pop it and deflate their ego and bring them back down and make them realize that no, you're mortal, you're normal, you're human, you're fallible, you're not perfect.
Most of the spirit centers that you have mediumship tables or and it's going good, all of a sudden they start being attacked. And if there is one of the mediums that has this kind of personality that I'm talking to, Emmanuel is the one that is giving me.
Right.
So
Yes.
this will be something that will create a problem inside.
Yep. Even
There is a book about that.
there's a book about it.
Yeah.
It's not Diary of a Counselor, but I know like it happened at a Spirit Center mentions that. Has that one too, but it's also written in, I believe it's either the Medium's book or Heaven and Hell. Because they start saying, and they have the false communications from Jesus, where it's like spirits that say, I'm Jesus and everything else, and they talk. And then Allan Kardec in his writing, he was analyzing it, and he says like, no, this can't be Jesus. Why? It's using specific terms for a fisherman or a sailor. And we knew that Jesus was a carpenter. He wouldn't know this thing about fishing, these details, these specific details. Let alone, I think even between that, I think there was even a fishing term that was exactly too advanced. It was from the era of Kardec. So it wasn't from the ancient areas. So it's like it was one that made them think and question it. So that's part of like why we're here, is to build that intelligence. And we can sit there and say like, okay, that may not be right. We don't want to get ourselves going down a dark path, which is the defense for all of these. But like you said, especially if you're going in the mediumship group, you're working the table, and things seem to be going good, and then they start doing. That's when the spirits will start saying like, okay, let's have fun with this group. Make it feel like they got visited by Emmanuel, Andre Louise, the spirit of Chico Xavier, like all these things. Ben Franklin, for all these big names. All of a sudden they come in here and they feel like these people like, oh, we finally arrived. We're getting these spirits from all these well-known spirits, and I think we must be blessed and everything else. And we're not realizing they're getting fascinated. They're getting trapped. So it's like this is, and especially when it's, like it says, when you're going down that dark path and you're getting those messages, lead them to accept the most absurd doctrines and erroneous theories. And this is when, like, for those that don't know, that when Allan Kardec, when he was composing, especially the Spirits book, he had his system, and he would send the questions out far and wide, and he'd have to get the same answer from two different mediums, from two different locations that had no connection with each other. That was one of his tests to prove that it was a valid answer. He probably got thousands of answers, questions, and things that were like didn't match up, didn't link up. But it's like when he started getting at least two, they said like, okay, this has to be controlled from higher up. These are the true messages. This isn't the garbage, the background noise, the static. This is the stuff to pay attention to. And then he also compared it against the Bible, especially with the gospel. Had to be in line with the teachings of the gospel. Because even the gospel says like, hey, test the prophets. Anyone that comes and says that says they're a prophet for me, test them. That way you know that they're real or not. Same thing applies. Anything, when we get these wonderful communications, we get these wonderful writings. Like I remember several writings, I think, like to say, here's an example of one. I saw an example of a writing that was passed to me, but no one ever said it was corroborated or backed. If someone's talking about, it was talking about the coronavirus pandemic. It came out right in March of 2020, right when it first was blooming up. Had wonderful things to say, talking about, it was mentioning how the virus came about because it was decreed that this would have been better. It would have uplifted human morality better than another world war. I was like, okay, that was nice to hear, but only got it from one location, one center amongst many, and then they took it and they shared it worldwide. And it's like, it's nice to see, nice to hear, but need to come from another place, someone else. So there should be another message somewhere else. And unfortunately, since they put it out on the internet, can't kind of verify it. You kind of ruined it. Because yeah, you could get the same message from somewhere else, but since it was already posted on the internet, can't truly verify that it's independent.
And I think that is the criteria. There's no verification by any other source, and you put it in the internet.
Yep. See, so I saw that and got it. It spread so fast. So it was great to see. It was nice, uplifting, kind of gave you a little bit of hope and everything else, but you had to take it with a dash of salt. That and I had to add salt to taste. It was like one of those things. It's like, not sure if this is authentic or the real deal. So, like I said, it's nice to listen to and everything else. It's just like going to watch Star Wars or Marvel film, Disney, something like that. They're great stories. They aren't the truth. They may inspire things that can be the truth. They may come from bits of the truth. They're not the truth. So, big one, number 3. Subjugation. This is the big one. This is one where they find themselves in true bondage. This is the one that movies love. This is your Exorcist is a big one, yes. So many love to use this one. So, victims will become paralyzed, they find themselves under true bondage. Subjugation can be mental or physical. Mental, making frequently absurd, compromising decisions, which under the kind of delusion regarded as sane, it's a type of fascination. So they're subjugated, so that they would always sit there. It's like, I'll use this as an example. It's not linked, but it's like when you have someone with OCD or something like that, the obsessive compulsive. If this is true subjugation, everything else, they just suddenly get it. It doesn't, and then it can still disappear over time. It's not something that they've had like their entire life. But it's someone like all of a sudden it's like, I'm sitting here like I can only do a left turn. If I want to go right, I have to do left turns. And that's kind of what they do. Or they will sit there and say like, I'm going to make sure you can't, anytime you go by a church, cramped or something, anything to tell you it's like, no, you're not going there. I'm in control. There it's very, very hard, because a part of it too was the big component with a lot of these obsessions is it just shows how weak we are spiritually. Our morals are so low that it's easy for another spirit that can just come in and just take control. It's still your body. You still technically have control, but you're just not strong enough to resist. You're not there to fight it. You're not there. You're not strong enough yet. So you're like the kid that gets bullied. And the bully just sits there and tells you, it's like they expect you to give you your lunch money or your milk money or whatever it is. It's like, here, give me your game, give me your comics and everything else. It's like, and you just casually surrender it up to them because you just like, no, don't hurt me, don't do anything to me. Not realizing that if you can strengthen yourself, make yourself smarter, improve yourself morally, so that then by the time, as usually truly in most cases in life, once you really shine the light on the bully was actually in the worst position than the person they bullied. So they envied the person they bullied. That's why they bullied them. But once that person that's able to fend for himself has strength, they can turn around and sit there and find out that it was the bully that actually needed the help. And it's many the same way with this. When you start getting into these people, it's like that spirit that's doing these horrible things, they need a lot of help. They are almost screaming. And the fact that they are controlling another person, just sitting there telling you like, hey, this is the reason. It's like that spirit is in so much pain, so much torment, it's taking it out on someone else. But it needs someone to come in and rescue it. I haven't seen this book in a while out in the bookstore, Disobsession. Has anyone read that here? In Portuguese. Okay. Read it in English, and that was a mind opener for me, because like one of the first books I read when I first came in, I was like, they handed that one to me, and I was like, wow. When you sit there and see, actually, I think it was Obsession was the other one, but it was like a little girl on her coming out party. I think it was like her 16th birthday or 13th birthday. It was like she was like coming out into the world, being a young lady, and all of a sudden this spirit comes in and just makes her a totally different person. She starts swearing at her mom, cursing her out, telling her how evil and bad she is and everything else. Come to find out, through the course of that story, you come to find out that spirit was once tied to that family. Like they all knew each other through past lives. And thus, through spiritual awakening, passes, all kinds of things going on with the life, they were able to free that spirit, get that spirit the help it needs, but it also showed that it proved the link between all of them, and that all of them needed to improve. All of them had to say, I'm sorry to each other, and that whatever they did, they needed to resolve that issue from a past life. And it showed up in this one. But because of this strong subjugation, it only came to light to this.
In the gospel also, there is a part where Jesus encountered a young man that was subjugated.
Mm-hmm.
Many spirits, because they were not just one, they were legion.
Yes.
And that was a very good.
Yes, and then he cast them all out, and he had the authority to sit there and say, no, get out. So yes,
Normally, it's a process, right?
It is.
From simple to
Mm-hmm.
3 stages, not
Yes.
something that it's rare to happen all in once, like go straight to level 3 to subjugation.
Right.
They building up on.
Yes. Yeah, because like you were saying, like we were talking about the fast stations, you build up, they build up the ego, and it's like sit there and like, and as soon as you can get them to a place where they sit there and they start shunning everyone else, it's like, oh, they're wrong. They're all wrong, and they start isolating themselves. Then they can be subjugated. You're right. That is true. And then, but we were sitting like, I put this in here, even though, like it says, Spiritism has documented many times and proven that there is no such thing as possession. Even though this is everything we see with subjugation seems to be like possession, but there's some big differences. So, and like it says, it had these right here. They're listed. Existence of beings who are created for evil and forever turn to it. It's like we've proven that nobody stays evil forever. All must progress. You can be stuck at a point, but eventually you have to move on. I think Al has that slide from a couple weeks ago that has the line for we're third order all the way up to first order. And we are all progressing on that line ever so slowly. So I used to use me being an engineer and everything else, I kind of like do a little math equation. Mine's not a straight line. Mine's actually like a curved line because it always seems like as people are learning, it takes forever to learn something. But as I've seen through history, it's like when you look at the progression of technology and morals, it goes slowly, and they like slowly learn. Bronze Age, Iron Age, and everything else. It takes this long time before it starts going into it, and then it's like then you get to a point where then they start learning things faster, and it goes faster and faster, and that's when this curve starts to turn up and goes higher and higher and higher, and eventually you're learning all this stuff. But then when the other end of that spectrum is how good you can be. And it's like you can learn lots of stuff, but you're so close to perfection, it takes forever to get closer and closer to perfection. But I think the equation I use is the y equals 1 over x. I think -1 over x. So that because I think that equation is like you can't touch 0.
I believe this one is from you. It should be numbers, not the equal one.
So, in many ways, I agree with you, especially when you got but that, like it says, but that 1 over x, when it hits, like it says, it can't touch 0. So it's like, and on this scale, it's like perfection. It's like you get your scale on the bottom. It's like from know nothing to moral perfection. And then here it's like, then you got your time and your level of education, level of knowledge. You spend a lot of time knowing so little for so long because it takes forever to learn something new. But then once we start learning, we start building upon that foundation. That's when things progress faster and faster and faster. It's like this is, and I think we're in that section of the curve where things are progressing faster and faster, and we're learning things all the time, faster and faster and faster. And I think somewhere along the way, we're going to start making that turn, and we're going to be some point where we have to start using what we learned in the past to build upon it and realize that it's not just, as we're finding out, it's not just physical. There's an invisible part. There's a spiritual part, an emotional part. Like it says, when you look at all the advancements in psychology over the years, it has taken leaps and bounds. And it's great seeing, for those who don't know, like they've had these spiritist medical conferences they used to have every 2 years. And they would always meet and discuss how things have improved and how much the spiritual side directly links with our mental, our physical side. And it's like they see this, like these things we see in Obsession, even in that book Obsession, I think that was the true one, mentioned they took this lady and she was put into a mental institution. They gave her shock therapy. They just zapped her and thought that would correct it. Didn't do a thing. But then they had a nurse that was also a spiritist that went in there one day, prayed for her, gave her passes. All of a sudden, she had just calmed down. So it was like, there's another part to this. Science said one thing, but we're finding out that there's more to it. And we know so little. Like this doctrine, I like it because it kind of gives a guide path. It says, hey, these are the things we learn, but this is just the beginning. Imagine what happens, you can build upon it. I was talking to somebody the other day about how it would be nice to sit there and say, like, if there was some good mediums or good someone else, like to create a new book or three that would go with it, that would stack onto it, just like we had like the Old Testament, the New Testament. Put a new version on top of this and saying, hey, this was what the Spirit of Truth was able to dictate 150, 175 years ago, but you've progressed so much in that time frame. This is the new stuff. You've already bought that stuff. This is new. This is the next level. I'm giving you more truths that builds upon this. That I would like to see. I know there's a lot of us working on it. Yes?
Remember that Kardec wasn't a medium.
That's true. He was not a medium.
Maybe you can help us. I'm kidding, but it's just that, it's important to remember that Kardec wasn't a medium. And he was able to, work with other people. So it's a group that these things possible.
That's true. Yes, it was always a group effort, and things changed over time. He didn't use the same mediums at the beginning as he used at the end. They progressed, just like the technologies of the time progressed. I mean, they were starting with the wrapping tables and the knocks and everything else, and they were able to progress. They got to the spinning tops, the Ouija board, and everything else, all the way up till they found out that says, like, you know what? Let's put a pencil in their hand and let them write, and that's what they went to, and they were able to progress through that time frame and learn all this stuff and progress. And that's knowledge from 170 years ago. Imagine if that latched on and everything else to go with it. Now, going back to this, that obsession factor is pretty strong, because I can easily see a lot of obsessing spirits jumping on the world, making sure that knowledge, good knowledge, doesn't get out there easily, gets held. But you can't keep a good thing down. And that's why, one, the doctrine survives to this day. It's being shared, it's being talked about, it's disseminated, it's gone around the world. So the United States is we're a little stubborn about it, a little bullheaded, kind of hard, a little dense to get through, but it's getting there. It's getting there.
Here in Orlando, we have the fourth spiritual center.
Yes, there's four in.
There was only one back in 1999.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I pulled this from the book, kind of make this one. Obsessions recognized by the following characteristics. Like it says, and this is, it kind of goes here, like this first one is the simple. Insistence on communicating, whether the medium desire it or its opposition to all other spirits to do so, kind of like impinges its will, trying to do what it's doing. Then you start getting into the fascination ones, the illusion, the belief in the indisputable identity of a spirit. I guess is when they think that they're being talked to by Emmanuel, Brother Chico Xavier, Brother X, some of the other spirits that are out there. And then you got their praise of spirits that they communicate through his or her. So this is their ego one. So this is the big one. How many times we said you got to watch your ego, and you got to emphasize humility. Don't let the pride go. So the avoidance of those who provide enlightenment in that situation. It's like when you start to see people pull away and withdraw, that's a big sign. Especially I know on a separate topic, we were also mentioning that with the suicides, and how like a lot of people that are like considering suicide, they kind of start to withdraw, they start to pull back, they just start to disappear from the world. Now, it's probably this is in play. Obsession is definitely in play for those people, Not always, but it is something to consider, and it is something to sit there and say, hey, this person needs help. And when you have this true societal group, like when we rely on each other, we discuss with each other, we go reach out and we communicate with each other, it helps us to realize that, hey, something's going on with Sam. He's not been here for a while. I wonder if he's okay, or if he's starting to get pulled away into something he shouldn't be, going down a darker path. And maybe we can go in there and help pull him back out. And so it's kind of like cut in here. Insistent opportunity needs to write. And then here we'll get the subjugation, coercion, and to sit there and make them where it's like they can't operate, they can't function. So I think I might just leave this one as the last one. So to summarize, the danger is not in spiritism, since we use it to control and save ourselves from the constant risk to which we expose ourselves without realizing it. So again, knowledge is power. Got to keep learning, keep understanding, and also keep discussing. So even if you have an idea or a topic or something like that, or maybe even just a concept, it's like I said, it like even using what you just brought up in Happy Life, use that. He brought up something, I threw it in here, I added it into my own speech. So I'm saying like you got the people you want to beat. So now I brought that in. So we have that discussion, we have that dialogue. It's part of the reason we're here. Sharing of ideas, sharing different things that we could open up the discussion and learn. And that maybe we can, what works for me may not work for someone else, but it may work for this other person. Or a combination. We can discuss and we can find other ways. Maybe I did it in a way that's like a crawl, and someone else has a way that makes it where they can walk. And a third person can add a statement and say, hey, this is what I did, and now they can run with it. They can learn and figure things out much, much faster. And that's kind of the one of these things we're sitting here talking about, like this doctrine, with the knowledge and what we learn from working together. So, but to finish off this quote, the danger is in the propensity of certain proud mediums. So there's that pride, ego, it's in there again, who lightheartedly, there's another one too, lightheartedly. So they don't put the weight to it, they don't commit, they don't realize, they just say, It's like, no, you got to embrace it. Regard themselves as exclusive instruments of highly evolved spirits. Exclusive instruments? No. I mean, you can read the Bible, you can read, and it always comes from multiple different directions. Like I said, even through Spiritism, we've said 2 different mediums, 2 different locations, and did not know each other. So you're never going to be exclusive. Of highly evolved spirits, and in the kind of fascination that does not allow them to comprehend the idiocies they interpret. So that blinds them to the knowledge they read. When they sit there and it's like, that don't make sense. So that's the bulk. What is this? Like I said, I know we just went over what they are. Like I said, going over helping people that are going through it, that's why you need to do more in-depth studies and everything else. That's why we have those other classes, the mediumship courses and everything else, to go through and start diving into how to help people like this. Because like I said, especially subjugation and fascination, it's a group effort. There's people always praying for them. They're doing the passes, the spiritual assistance. There's a lot that has to go on to help pull someone out of it, and that person themselves has to commit to trying to strengthen themselves, improve themselves, read spiritually enlightening books, sitting there showing love and compassion, not only to the person that's bothering them, but to others. So you have to reach out and commit to being in the quest. Again, commitment. So don't take it lightheartedly. If you're undergoing obsessions, you all are. No one's immune from it. But if we put the effort into it and don't let our pride also get in the way, then we can finally step up and hopefully overcome our obsessions and further our own progressions. So, believe.
This obsession happens only from discarnate to incarnate?
No, it does not. Good question. It can come from any different direction. And it's even funny when you have an incarnate obsessing a discarnate. Because this is it's my dear friends, love them to death and everything else. They just lost their mother. She just passed away from a freak heart attack, literally like a week ago. And they have been distraught. And they so badly want her, they want her back in her life. And it's going to be one of these things where it's like, I can almost see this. I'm using this as an example. But it's like they want their loved one back so much. That spirit can't move on. It feels their pain and suffering and anguish, and we're putting the torment on them. We're subjugating that spirit. We're making the obsession on that spirit, so that we're the ones that are in the wrong. So yes, yes, you can have incarnate to discarnate, incarnate to incarnate, and you can also have incarnate to discarnate. You can have all different directions. Any other questions before we move on? Seeing none, I guess it's time now for our lovely vibrations. Valdo?